Hey guys, so today I want to cover um, Eloquent and Query Builder. I want to talk a little bit about the differences. I want to talk about when to use them and for what purpose. So I don't know if I need to draw anything today, but I did increase the font size of my editor and to help you guys see a little clearer. Let's see what we covered. Last time we integrated our theme. We have a dashboard, a login, and a registration page. Today, let's start working with the database a little bit. So this episode is going to be about Eloquent and Query Builder. So what is it? So if we go to Laravel.com, go to documentation, and go down to the database section, and look at the getting started guide, you should see kind of what Laravel can do. So Laravel out of the box supports MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, and SQL Server because their actual backend is using PDO. And if you look in your config and database file, you should see all the different connections your Laravel instance will support. SQLite, MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, and you can actually add more. Down below you have Redis, and later you can do MongoDB, whatever. It's just all configurable from here. Really easy to use. I generally use this. Here we have MySQL set up. I generally use MySQL to get stuff started, and I try to code using Eloquent. And the reason being is Eloquent is agnostic, so it doesn't really care which server you write to using database wise. So to give you a good example, this is our Heidi SQL client app, and you can use SQL Pro or you can use PHP MyAdmin. If you open your jokes table and go to query and type in select all from jokes and hit run, you should see all of your records show up. So if I wanted to say select, say we do select just joke title from jokes, then it'll give us just that column. If you do select all, it'll give you all. So I don't want to get too deep into SQL. You can look up and see what all of these queries are. You can do some really cool searches too. You can say where user equals 1. So or you could say maybe 2. So user 2 created no jokes. User 1 has created 9 jokes. But you can also, instead of counting them by hand, you can say count ID as total. And you can see user 1 created 9 jokes. So that's basic SQL queries. Now that we're interacting with the database, we're going to start doing this. Before you saw me just loop through jokes, and that was probably confusing to you. What I did was in the controller, the home controller, so using the ORM, we can access our database and use basically PHP pre-built functions to access it. So if you come over here, actually in most IDEs, good IDEs, you can hold down the control button and mouse over this function, and then it'll take you to where that function is created. So all basically pulls, does a query, it does get, and then that one says get. You can go into get. So I'm digging deeper and deeper now into the function, and you can see that this is basically what the ORM can do for us. We do have a jokes model. So if you go to application and jokes, and by default this uses a model function or a model class. And the model class already contains everything we need. It's like a trait. Well, it's not really a trait, but it extends the model class. Because it extends the model class, by default we have all these functions. So all I did was basically say in the home controller, hey, include app jokes, and app jokes already has a bunch of functions for us. And if you say jokes at all, it'll go and automatically fetch for us all. It'll automatically do this: select all from jokes, and then it'll just bring everything back. In fact, you can take this result and you can say dump and die. I don't even know if that's actually what it's called, but yeah, it's dump and die, and refresh here, and you can see that it brings back a JavaScript object, well, not a JavaScript, but a JSON object that contains everything. Actually, I think it was right, yeah, jokes. So you can see it contains 9 jokes objects, and then inside there in the attributes, everything about that row is included with it. And if you do the same thing to the users table, for example, it'll give you all the users. In any table you have, as long as you have the model automatically does this. So you might be confused right now what's happening, but in a nutshell, Laravel, it has an ORM that automatically interfaces with your database, and then basically specifying which table, as long as you name things correctly. For example, the jokes model has the jokes table. These two match, minus the capital J. It can actually pull automatically. Now let's say your table isn't called jokes, it's called user jokes. At that point, the ORM will fail. It won't pick it up. So you have to actually open up jokes, come down here and say, protected. You can say table equals, whatever your table name is, jokes. And now it will find that table and use it. But let's say the ID isn't, what was ID? Primary key. Let's say your primary key isn't ID. Let's say yours is JID, like that. Then you can set it here. So for me, it's just ID. Because if you look at my database, the primary key is ID, and then my jokes table is jokes. So basically, when you type PHP artisan make model, and then you'll say like users, for example, that'll create a new model here, and then it'll tap into the users table, and by default it'll know to pull from the users table. If you name it something different or something fancy, then you have to specify what the tables are. So you can still leverage all of the ORM functionality. You just have to do it in a way that you just have to let the model know where the tables are. So now that we have this, this is one way to get. So I'm going to show you many different ways to get the data. So this is going to be using DB, or it's going to be query builder. By default, the core of this actually uses query builder too, I think. So query. No, I think it still does. So another way to do this is say jokes equals jokes colon say get. This is another way to do it. So actually this isn't correct. This is using Eloquent. Another way to do this is to say jokes equals DB, and then you see how it pops up and says, hey, are you talking about this facade? And you say enter. that automatically adds it up here so that you don't have to do it. If your editor doesn't automatically add it, you're going to have to write this out and put it in there for this to work. Otherwise, this will throw an error. So another way you can say is table jokes. So now we're not using the model to get our table. Instead, we're using query builder. So this is going to say db table jokes get. All right, so it's going to get everything. So if you look right here, we'll dump this. Make sure. So right here, you can see this is a collection. But if I refresh, it's exactly the same collection. It says items, and it's exactly the same, except it doesn't have as much data. You can see that it doesn't have all of the model functionality that comes with it. It's a very lighter weight system. So this is actually much lighter than this is. This thing contains all the functionality that comes with the model that extends, whereas the DB table jokes works without a model. So we don't need this model for this to work, right? Without model. It is itself a model. It's like a dynamic model. Another way to pull this information is through the user. Okay, so the way we can do this is in the user model, we can create what are called relationships. So down below, you could say public function has, well, actually we'll say jokes. And in here we can say return has many, say app jokes. Is it this way or this way? I don't know. Thought it was that way. Actually, let's confirm that. Oh, yeah, it's backslash. There you go. As many jokes, app jokes, and then I think that's all you need to do here. There you go. And basically, it automatically recognizes. It should automatically recognize the user's jokes. And you might think, or actually, this is also need. Don't worry about that. So this one says using the user's model, it'll pull this user, and then it'll say has many jokes. So what's happening here is this is basically a join. So it'll take the users table and join the jokes to them. So it basically does this. Select all from users, left join jokes on jokes dot user ID equals users dot ID. This basically says this is your user and this is the jokes that they added. So how do you know this is working? Well, we're going to test it right now. Another thing is if your IDs aren't matching up, so it doesn't automatically recognize those relationships, you can specify and say on jokes it's user ID, and on users it's ID. So now I specified the actual relationship, which is user ID and ID. And I basically specified it the same way right there. So minimize. So to use this in your home controller, you can actually specify the user you were interested in. Because if you do, let's say, user find the first user, then you can say get their jokes. That's one way of doing it. This is a random user. Jokes equals. Another way to do this is to say jokes equals auth user. This is the current authenticated user, and get their jokes like that. So let's try this one. We'll try this way. Fresh. Ooh, this is cool. So this one says app.user controller isn't actually existing, because when I specify user here, I didn't add them there. So I can say use app user. There you go. Refresh. Auth should actually break too. So auth as well is another one. Use auth. So there we go. This time it says, hey, look at that. It says has many users. So this one looks completely different than what we're normally used to, right? Because we didn't actually say what to do with these jokes. Yes, we have a relationship formed, but it's not really doing anything with that. And in order to solve for this, you have to actually add a get at the end of it. Maybe it's the first one that you want. Maybe it's the last one that you want, or maybe you just want to get it. Now I could also add get to our user table right here and say just get this, right? The only problem with doing that way is it pretty much closes our query and we can't add to it, and this isn't as useful to us. So it's better to leave it open-ended, and then here in your controller specify exactly what you need. So I just need to get it right now. So save, hop back over, refresh, and you can see this is another collection. And this time though, it's using model relationships. So now we have all this other capabilities that come with it. So how do you actually loop through this? We have many different ways of actually using this. So grab through relationship. This one's going to be grab through relationship. There you go. Sorry if I'm literally talking as I'm typing. I'm trying to do that less. So now this is probably the most eloquent way to do this. None of these are eloquent to do it. So we're going to do it like this. So let's keep this the way it is for now. I'll show you varieties later. But I think I'm gonna put these away for now. I'll leave it up for you guys to see. So there we go. So now we have all our jokes. So there's a few ways to loop through this. One, you can obviously do print print R. You can do dump and die, which actually shows you what's in here, which we've seen. It looks like this. But you can see that this is an object, and this object has an array. So the first way you can do it is just a standard for each loop. So you can loop through each of these objects. The second, while you're looping through, now you have an object and you have attributes in that object. So the way I do it is I say for each So I'll say for each jokes as joke, you can then die the joke right here. This will tell you what's in the joke. So the joke has, see, now we're the first item in, and this is our object for that first item. Now we can pull something specific out of it, like joke title, like this. This is our attribute, and bam, we have our title. We can pull joke content. Fresh, boom, joke. So what do we do? The first record for this user, we grab the title and the joke content right there. Now let's say we wanted to know or maybe let's say we didn't want to do this for each loop, and we're not comfortable with using objects. We just wanted it to be a regular array that we're associative array. Okay. We already know what we want. We just want jokes and punchlines, let's say. So here, instead of get, you can pluck joke title and say to array. Refresh. So now it just dumped an array. No objects or anything of all our jokes, joke titles. Now let's say I didn't quite need this. I just want to count how many I have. So I can say count. Actually, I think I'm gonna keep that for you. So here you could also do count chocolate. And now it brings back 9. Let's say we just want the first entry. So this is the first one, title joke, ID 1. Let's say we just wanted the last one. That's not even defined, so can't do that. That's a lie. Jokes. Just get all of them this way. So that's how you interact with the database using relationships. Now there are other ways to interact with the data as well. If you come over here to Query Builder, there's a lot here. How to do selects, how to do raw expressions, joins, unions, where clauses. I can show you some cool where clauses here. So let's say, you know, I want this. We'll say, let's organize this a little neater. Where, let's say, ID equals 1. Come back over here. So boom, just pull the first one. Let's say I wanted to, just search for a specific date range. You can say where between created at, and then you have to say the start date, which I think we're saying now, comma now. This won't give us any results, 0, because I just said now, comma now. I think I could do sub days. Let's do 2. So now subtract 2 days and now. No jokes. Not funny. Maybe 4 days. Oh. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing here. Let's look and see what this looks like. DD. So 2 days ago is 3:01. My server time might be off UTC because here created at, oh, I got it. So we have 2 created at. So we have the created at of the joke and the created at of the user. The user is all the way in February 28th, but the joke, we have a few of them. We have some that actually meet our criteria, which is this guy right here. So these 2 should have shown up as in the jokes. Why didn't they? Most likely because created at is probably pulling from the user and not the jokes. So we can either add jokes.created at to this, or we can completely remove the link with the users, and there we go, we got 2 of them. Actually, no, we don't. We're still dying here. So close that. And still nothing, eh? Ooh, I love a good mystery. So let's, where between created at, let's not, oh, here we go. Let's try this. To date. Now I think it's fine then. Is this gonna work for us? Let's try 5 days. So 5 days ago. What's today's date? 3/4. 5 days ago puts us here. Maybe it's because of the now. Anyways, that's how you do it. That's how you troubleshoot it. Now is actually a Carbon function that is included in Laravel. You don't really have to call it out. It kind of does it for you automatically. And it's cool, man. If you can learn anything about Carbon, Laravel Carbon. It's not really a Laravel product, but that's how I search for it. I mean, you can do all sorts of things here. You can say, so this now is what we're using. Carbon is assumed here, so you can add 1 day. You can take now, add 1 day. You can format days in a specific way. If you do it this way, it shows it to you like that. And there's tons of documentation of how you want the date to be represented. The other huge use case for it is not all of your users are going to be in your time zone. Some of your users will be in Mountain Time. Some of them will be in Eastern Time. Some of them will be outside the US on a completely different time zone. So we'll have to actually catch that and convert the time from UTC, which is our Universal Standard Time. Universal Time. What's the C stand for? I'm not sure. I knew it. I forgot. Convert that back to the time zone of the end user. So right now, we're not going to worry about that, but it is a concern. But as long as we use the same way to pull time, we should be able to tap into this model and adjust it per time zone. And I'll show you how we can do that later. So for now, there we go. We just pulled this user's information, and there we go. That's how easy it is to work with the database using ORM. Now let's say you had, you'll say you wanted to only see a few items. So let's say to array, let's do not pluck, we'll do get to array like that. And if you come over here, let's say I didn't want to see ID, I just needed title, content, and I wanted the actual user's name, not just ID, right? So here you can do select, and you can say joke, title, joke, I did that, content, and then, so now I want to see the user ID or the name of the user for this. Since I have joined the users table, why doesn't that show up here, right? So can you do users.name? No, you can't. So this is your actual query that it's doing. Select joke title, joke content, users.name from jokes, where jokes, the user ID equals 1. So it's not really a join as so much as it just uses the user ID of the one that we plan to pass through it, which is right here. But we can still pull the user, and this is how we do it. We could say with user. So then in the users table it says, or in the jokes table it says, no, not in the jokes table. In the jokes function it says, yo, I don't know this person. It doesn't really say yo actually. It says basically, I don't know what you're talking about here. Jokes, okay. So let's try it with this guy right here. Let's see if this works here. Yeah, same thing here, but it is an interesting. Let's remove this user with users relationship title, and let's remove the select. Still nothing about the user, just the user ID. Let's not do array. Fresh. Or users. So generally, if there was a relationship here, you would actually see it in here. But we can do this a little different. So back where we have users and we have has many jokes, this one basically just gave us the jokes without the actual join of the users. So let me show you how we can do a join. Actually, relationships is what we need. This Eloquent and relationships. Let's do creating relationship existence, absence. User the post. So this is what we're doing here right now. And instead, I want to get the query within belongs to. There you go. Let's try belongs to. So actually, one sec. Do inside the jokes table, the jokes belongs to users. I guess we'll just do it this way. Has many, and then we'll leave has many the way it is here on jokes, has many jokes. But in the jokes table, we'll say jokes belong to users, and in the home controller, then we can say with users. That's all we need to do here. 9, and then down here, a relationship will automatically appear. You click that, and you should see users on jokes, and then it gives you the full user and all their information. Actually, it's not good. Oh, I did that backwards. One sec. In jokes, no, in user has many jokes, and then in jokes, users, like that. Actually, it's user, and it's the ID. On a local, it's user ID, like that. And let me explain this here in a second. There you go. Fresh. Is it not user? That was user. It belongs to. Oh. Jokes the user belongs to. Yeah. Belongs to user on ID. Yes, everything looks good here. Oh, maybe I did these backwards. There you go. And now we actually have the user that it belongs to as well. There you go. So Bob has this record. So now that you have inside of jokes, jokes belong to users, and then inside of users, users have many jokes. That makes sense? And on your home controller, when you query for jokes on a specific user, so let's say this would be the authenticated user logs in and says, I want to see all your jokes, but I want to see with users, and I want you to select, I don't know if select is good now, and then you basically can say users and then name. Actually, this won't work this way yet. You'll loop through each of the jokes like that. And as you're looping through the joke, you can say print joke title. Then you'll say joke user's name. Then you'll, I guess, just do break. And here you can just die. So there you go. So we have title written by Bob, we have title written by Bob, AS or JSL written by Bob, ASDF is written by Bob. And you can even say email here as well. So anything from that users table is now available for you. And this, the reason why we can do this is because we added a relationship with it. So you might be wondering, what the heck did I just do, right? So let's say I was, what does this query even do? Is it doing the query on the loop, or is it doing it before? You can actually change this to SQL and dump it like that and see what the query is supposed to do here. So if you look, this is what the full query is. Select all from jokes where jokes user ID equals this and user ID. So this is going to pass in. This is the initial query. Then the secondary query comes in right here. It actually pulls, depending on your need, it'll pull that user information along with that. Now, you're probably still wondering, like, well, how do I join, without doing with? How can I join users here? You can still do left join. You still have a lot of power here, users. And you can say on users.id equals, and then you can say jokes.userid. And this basically accomplishes the same thing, except you have to then specify what you want to bring out. So then you can say select users.name, users.email, jokes.title. So I should have everything I need there. Get, and this time has many left join. Is that right? Oh, left join. I spelled it wrong. Left join, there you go. Jokes.title. Dang. Joke title. There we go. And then in here, instead of using our subquery here for jokes, you could just remove this. There you go. Because then it acts like a normal table. Same exact thing. Actually, might even be faster. Let me show you what this looks like here. So now the object is no longer in a relationship with someone else. Instead, it's all located in one object and replicated through each of the loops. So this you might be more familiar with than you are with the previous one I showed you using with. Now you can still do with. You can still include this. What's the difference and what's the advantage of using with right here and using the relationship? Well, let's say like the user has an avatar picture. So now you have to come in here and say users.avatar. Later, let's say we use age. Later, let's say we use, activity, whatever. I mean, there's time zone. There's all kinds of random things that we might need about the user. And instead of just pulling everything about the user and just completely drowning it, you can call it with this right here. And you don't have to write this way. But it's really a preference at this point. This is cleaner. This is already getting into Query Builder. And this is Eloquent. So for example, look how I have to write 2 of these. Now, this you might have to write regardless, but I have to write this long code. And then I might misspell something. You already saw me misspell something 3 times, and that's because I'm not using Eloquent. Using Eloquent, you kind of do it right. You only need to misspell one thing here and you can fix it. Everything else just kind of flows. The advantage here also is you don't have to remember the name of the tables. So using Eloquent, I don't have to remember what user's table was or is. I just have to remember the models. So later if we prepend all our database table with a underscore, jokes underscore users, jokes underscore jokes underscore permissions, etc. To make that change, you just change it in the model, right? This model right here, and everything works. But if you just made a bunch of left joins everywhere, then it's not going to work. It's going to break your app. So building your app right the first time is the most important thing you can do. So to wrap this one up, I want to now remove this get all function and just get jokes that I've created. I already know who I am, so I don't need to know with users, so I don't need this. And I need get. I can remove this stuff. I can remove that. So there you go. Now I'm going to send these jokes that I just queried the database through my controller. I'm going to send them to the home view. So if you remember, the home view is located in resources under views under home blade, and then down below where we have the for each loop where we loop through each of the jokes, you can notice that for each looks a little bit different, like a blade formatting or blade templating syntax. I loop through the jokes the same way, except this time during the loop iteration I am showing I'm creating a div and I'm putting the jokes in there. There's one more thing I need to do here. I need to know when this joke was created. So you can do this with Eloquent by adding something here like this. So let's say span, and here we'll say created at, and then diff for humans, class float right. Actually, float right. So now, actually, float right. This thing doesn't seem to be working. Is it pull right? Float right. Man, it's correct. Oh, you know what though? I wonder if it needs to be there. I don't know. Maybe there was something broken with it. All right, here we go. 5 days ago, 5 days ago, 4 days ago. So here are the jokes that I created, me personally. So let's say, how do we test this? Let's say a different user, jokes, data, created the first joke. Let's say user 2 created it, and user 2 created this one. If you come back here and refresh, 2 of the jokes should just disappear because they're not mine. Let's say I only created walk into a bar and new joke, so we can go through here. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So now user ID 2 has those jokes, and I only have these 2 jokes. So refresh, bam, 2 jokes. To you right now, you're probably thinking, "Wow, this is pretty easy. Like, when are we going to get to the hard stuff?" Or are you just? I mean, it can't be this easy, can it? It actually can. Like, most of the application is actually pretty simple. You just have to know the right functions to invoke and the right concepts, right? As soon as you get a good idea of the direction you want to go, the sooner you can code your application cleaner. You always want to code it nicely and neat. You don't want to just make a mess and code everything like on top of each other. Like, if you notice my code here, if anything were like this, that to me would stand out like a sore thumb. When I would be looking for an issue or a bug in my application and I notice that is off, to me my eye is drawn to that, and then I'll fix it. Because there's a lot of people will do this. They'll do copy paste and they'll do this, and then they'll save, and then the application will just break. It's just like, what the heck is going on? So they'll come in their code and they'll read, and they're like, oh, what is this? You know, like, they'll correct it, and then they'll come here and they'll refresh it. So it's important to do good padding, indentation, clean syntax, and not messy code at all. You want to do it well. Jokes dashboard. instead of cards or jokes dashboard. So now I think we're about an hour, almost an hour into this. So I think we can wrap it up for today. I hope you have a good understanding now of Eloquent and Query Builder. Essentially, Query Builder basically lets you do all of the wheres and just kind of add on and selects and raws, and then Eloquent lets you do it in a manner where it's all divided into models and objects, and you can kind of link them together. So to summarize, jokes belong to users, and users have many jokes or has many jokes, and then the controllers invoke the or pull the jokes. So the authenticated user get their jokes. That's basically what I said here. And then throw that information to the home controller and display it. I'm gonna remove this, clean it up a little. There you go. Save. The other thing is up here we have a lot of unused functions. Another advantage of using Eloquent is you don't need all these things right here. You don't need the DB facade, and you don't need the jokes one. It all pulls correctly from the right areas. So I hope that made sense to you guys. Tomorrow we can dig into search. Search I want to spend some time into, and how to do asynchronous search, how to pull data, so that we can basically add functionality to this search area right here. So we're able to add content, we're able to see content, now we need to search for content. Also, we'll need to clean some of this up on the left. There's quite a bit of work there to be done still. But yeah, anyways, have a good day.